Welcome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Marissa Fallon, and I am the Director of Advocacy here at Parents Defending Education. I'm so excited about our episode today. We're going to be talking about how parents are being successful in advocating for their students in districts and states that are, I guess we could say, less than friendly to parents. I'm joined today by three amazing women who are going to join in our conversation. The first is Julie Barrett. Julie's the founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington and a mom of four. We also have Lori Gimelshteyn. Lori is the executive director of Colorado Parent Advocacy Network and Parents United America, as well as the mother of two teenage children. And we also have Scarlen Valderaz, who you all know. Scarlen is the wonderful mom of four who is our advocacy advisor here at Parents Defending Education. So I want to thank you all for spending the time with us today and spending time with our parents to talk about this really important topic. I hope your year is all off to a wonderful start. As we head into the 2024-2025 school year, we're about 2 months in now. We've had a very busy year. With back to school nights, everybody's over the hump of getting their back to school supplies, hopefully, although we always have the last minute, morning before they get on the bus, somebody needs a new notepad or something, but hopefully we're all over the hump of the immediate back to school, frenzy. This year has been such a busy year already. We saw a major rewrite of Title IX, which we're going to talk about today, which among other things allows biological men into girls-only spaces in school. This took effect in 24 states across the country on August 1st. We also saw California pass a law saying that school districts may not inform parents about the transgender status of their child at school. And that's really important because what we see a lot across the country, right, is as goes California, then other people across the country pick up on those policies and start to emulate and copy those policies. So that's a big one to keep an eye on. So the general internet wisdom, if you will, when people are in these kind of hostile districts and states is to pull your kid out of school, to move, put your kid in private school, do homeschooling. But the reality is it's not that simple for most parents. You have working parents, you have parents who are taking care of elderly, their own parents who might live in the district for a whole host of reasons. You have the financial burden. So there are a whole host of reasons why that just pull your kid out of school is not going to work for most families. So at Parents Defending Education, we put together a new resource, which is called Advocacy in Hostile Districts and States. So this resource guides parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens through realistic things you can actually do to minimize your students' exposure to indoctrination in school. And of course, the tips that we recommend and a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, they're really kind of a key entry point if you're in a very hostile district, but they're helpful for parents anywhere in any district. These are some real core tenements and real core, I guess I would say, tools in the toolbox for parents' rights advocacy that you can use anywhere. So we brought together Julie, Lori, and Scarlen to talk more about these to-dos for parents. But before we get started, I would love to have Julie and Lori just briefly talk about your journey to advocacy, how you got started in this space. Julie, let's start with you. How did you get involved and how did your group get started?
Well, thanks for inviting me to join you on this episode, Marissa. I'm really excited to be able to share some of the work that we've done in Washington, and hopefully it'll be helpful to parents. Like many activists, I got started accidentally. During COVID, Washington State had a lot of lockdowns and things going on. Kids were sent home in early March, and then we had the rioting in the summer of 2020, where Antifa took over a good portion of the city of Seattle. And I started a Facebook group, and it was never really supposed to be any big organization or activism group or anything like that. In 2021, my 14-year-old daughter had a mental health crisis and was at Seattle Children's Hospital. And upon discharge, the hospital sent her to a homeless youth shelter in Seattle without our consent. And that was because she was 14. So she was over the age of 13, and she was able to make a lot of decisions for herself. And that was legal for her in Washington State. This was all unbeknownst to me. So I started going down all the rabbit holes, trying to figure out how these laws were made, who made them, how long have these been in place. And that got me networked with some of the Washington state legislators and began our work as an organization, working in Olympia, trying to influence policy. Basically, in a state like Washington, you're trying to hold the line. And really what we've tried to do is educate and empower citizens to speak up and have a voice, whether it's in their school district or their city council or even at a state level in Olympia. And obviously, as a mom of four, the education was something I had firsthand experience with. I did have in our high school in Bothell, Washington, we did have the school socially transition our daughter for about 2 years before I found out about it. So that's a very sensitive issue to me, and really trying to give parents as many tools as possible so that they can get in and advocate for change and advocate for their kids.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think we're going to find, with everybody on our call today, I know Lori's going to echo this, it's really the love for our children and the passion that we feel for being parents that has really driven pretty much all of us into this space. So thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. Lori, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Thanks, Marissa. So I'm a speech language pathologist, and I've been in private practice for over 2 decades, working for families, advocating for families in the special education arena. And we had the great fortune of moving to Colorado in 2011. And we intentionally chose the Cherry Creek School District, which is really a destination district. It has an incredible reputation of academic excellence. And my husband, Max, and I, we really wanted our kids to just have the best opportunities possible for their future career readiness and education. And we have really enjoyed the elementary years of our children's education. And then, of course, 2020. And like many parents across the nation, Max and I started to become really concerned about some of the conversations that we were overhearing in the virtual learning and the conversations that we were now having with our children at dinner. And one of the first alarm bells that really happened for us was our daughter. This is at the beginning of the 2020-21 school year. So now they're starting to go back in these small groups twice a week, masked. And, it was a difficult time in our country. There was a lot of vitriol and it was a really difficult time. And so our daughter comes home and she sits down, she's 11. And she shares with us at the dinner table that her friend, Stella, is now going to be River. And River is going to use he, his, him pronouns and use the boys' room. Now, this was before the transgender craze became very commonplace in our nation. And my initial thought was I must have missed the email on this. And so I just commented, wow, that's really progressive of River's parents to ask the school to do a workshop. And Jenny replied to us and she said, oh no, Mommy, River goes home every day as a girl. His parents have no idea. And so that was really shocking. And then 2 weeks later, our son, who was in 8th grade at the time, 13 years old, in his English language arts honors class, he had an assignment and he asked me for some help. And so I sit down at his desk with him, and the assignment is titled, "Why is your favorite hobby racist? Why?" And in the rubric to get full points, he had to write racist against people of color. And he had started this project to fight racism in skiing. And I commented to Chris, I said, you will get an F on this paper before you lie. And Chris is that kid that needs to get the A. He's if he has a 99, he's going to fight for the 100. And he said, you don't understand, Mom. I have to think one way at home and another way at school. So that started my advocacy for my children. And, of course, quickly going through teacher, principal, school board, district administration, learning that Cherry Creek, that this was everywhere. This was in K through 12. We had learned about professional development that our teachers were required to take that taught them about this oppressed model, something where they're trying to disrupt whiteness in the classroom and bring in these LGBTQ standards. So now 4 years later, what originally started as me trying to protect my own children has become an organization that is statewide. The Colorado Parent Advocacy Network is a C4. We're a social advocacy group. We also have a C3 arm, which is our educational arm, Parents United America. And we are working to restore the parents' voice in education. We want to ensure that there is a reverse in the trend of plummeting academics. More than half of our students in the state of Colorado are not at grade level in reading, writing, or math. And we want our schools to be safe. And Marissa, at the beginning of the call, you brought up a really excellent point. Most families do not have the ability necessarily for school choice. And in Colorado, there is a huge attack on our school choice freedoms. In the past legislature, they actually tried to, under the guise of charter school accountability, to kill charter schools in our state. And so we're working really, really hard to ensure families have options.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lori. I think both of your stories are unique, but they're really not unheard of, right? We work with parents and parent groups across the country, and we hear a lot of these similar types of stories or variations of these stories about how and why parents have really, I think, woken up and really started digging into really finding out what's going in their schools. And I think more importantly, we've really seen a big shift in the past couple of years of what parents can do about it. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I think one thing we really want to talk about today is we love to give parents kind of next steps. What can you do? What can you do to show progress? What can you do to make a difference? It doesn't have to be huge, like starting these wonderful organizations that you guys both run. It can be anything little, from talking to a parent at a coffee house about what's going on in school, volunteering in your child's classroom to see what's happening. There are a lot of things that parents can do. So what we really want to talk about during this time together today is kind of the nuts and bolts of a toolkit, if you will, of what is out there already that parents can utilize. You don't have to shake the trees to come up with the newest approach ever to interacting with your school. If you want to do that, that's wonderful. But there are also a lot of tools that we already have that can be utilized that a lot of parents really don't know about. So one thing I want to start talking about, and Scarlen, I'm going to ask you about this, is surveys in schools. So yet again, the number one thing we're getting asked about at Parents Defending Education is everybody's gone back to school and everybody's signed their, handbook of behavior handbook at schools, is about invasive surveys. So even if parents are in districts where the school is giving a lot of surveys to the student, many of which cover inappropriate topics, and they tell the parents that they cannot opt out, what can the parents do? Scarlen, I'd love you to give us an overview of what is available to parents in this situation and how they can interact with their school about these surveys.
Yeah, Marissa, thank you. That's a great question. These surveys are definitely invasive because parents don't know that it's happening, and the students don't really understand why they're taking the survey. They just know that it's been handed to them by an authority figure and they need to take it to go to recess, go to lunch, or just go on to their next class. And it might seem like, there's nothing that you can do about it, and that's what the administration might tell you, but that's not true. And regardless of where your children are in the state, they probably are taking these surveys. So here's what you can do. The Federal Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, shortened PPRA, allows parents to opt their child out of certain surveys, like social emotional surveys, school climate surveys, and many of these forms need to be completed at the beginning of the school year. So when they hand you that really large packet, whether it be paper or online, there's so many things that you have to read through that, admittedly, sometimes you don't read it. But you kind of have to pay attention because this is where you can opt your child out. One thing to also look for is to see whether your school district or your state has an opt-in or an opt-out. So some states, like in Tennessee, there's an opt-in where the school district has to hound parents to fill out a permission slip so that the student can take this survey. In many school districts across the country, however, it's an opt-out where if you don't know that this is happening, then your child's going to take the survey because you haven't opted them out. So ask your school where you can find the opt-out form. Again, many times it's included in that packet that you signed at the beginning of the school year. But sometimes, you can, if you ask in time, you can opt them out anyway. Learn what the school survey schedule is and what will your child do if they're not taking the survey that's being administered in class. So a really great tip is to request the confirmation that your teacher or school has received your opt-out form, because in many cases from parents that I've heard across the country, they've signed that opt-out or opt-in form, yet their child is still taking that survey. So you need to do your due diligence and make sure, ask him once, twice, 3 times, however times you need to confirm that your child has opted out of the survey, and ask if they will be taken out of the classroom or what they will do in lieu of the survey. And also just be very communicative with your child. Talk to them about the student surveys. Let them know that they've opted out of participation, so that if someone tries to come in and tell them like, hey, no, you have to take it, you say, no, my mom and dad said that I'm not taking it. They opted me out, so I'm going to leave the classroom. And if they are given the survey anyway, there are steps that you can take. You can file a complaint with the Department of Education. Of course, talk to your school administrator first. Keep it local before going the federal route. But it's important that we do keep our eyes peeled for these invasive surveys.
Great. That's such good information. Thank you so much. Another tip that I learned with my own children that I recommend to people is print out a copy of your opt-out and put it in your child's backpack so they have it with them, because you don't want to have a confrontational situation where your child is saying something to the teacher and the teacher saying, no, that's not right. The child can just take the form out, and also take a screenshot if the child has a cell phone, because we have gotten a lot of parents have reached out to us who've had frantic children texting them and trying to call them from a classroom because a teacher is trying to give them something that they have already spoken to their parent about, and they know that they don't need to be taking. So those are just 2 little tips about having things like at the ready and reminding your child as they go off to school that day.
Yeah, and Marissa, I'd also like to add, I forgot to mention this, but under PPRA, the parent has the right to view that survey before your child takes it. So please do not forget that and exercise that right before you determine whether you want your child to take the survey or not.
That's another great tip. So Lori, have you had success in fighting back against these surveys, or what type of recommendations have you given to parents in Colorado about what their rights are?
Actually, a lot of the recommendations that Scarlen was just sharing, that is what we recommend families do. And we've actually, one of the most important things that we've done is we've put together conversation starters. As Scarlen was describing, talk to your kids about these surveys, make sure that they're armed and prepared to understand what is happening, because these surveys they're coming in through social emotional learning, they're being put into really every subject. And so we have to ensure that our children know what is appropriate and what is not. And so on our website at coloradoparents.org, we have a parents tab. And a lot of the resources are resources that we've gotten from our parent partners at Parents Defending Education, Courage is a Habit with Alvin Louie. And these resources just give parents what they need to really start these hard conversations with their children. But quite honestly, we're seeing exactly what Scarlen was describing. We are an opt-out state, so you are automatically opted in. We have state surveys that come out, and it's so funny because they use language to really manipulate parents. So our state survey, which really digs into our child's morals and values and their sexuality and their gender, all of this stuff comes under the guise of Healthy Kids Colorado Survey. And that's on the off years. And some of the questions, the first question is, what is your grade? The second question is, what is your age? And then the third question is, what is your gender identity? The fourth question is, some children identify as transgender. Are you transgender? And these are not about Healthy Kids Colorado. This is information where they're planting seeds. So we have this opt-out form template that we ensure parents have. And I love your idea, Marissa, of ensuring that your kid has a copy of that in their backpack.
Good. Thank you. Julie, what are you seeing about this topic in Washington State?
Well, I would basically echo everything Lori is saying, and that it is in, it's been implemented into every subject. It's not just one survey that you're going to find in somewhere embedded into comprehensive sex ed. It's been pushed into every subject, and there are multiple surveys. What we are hearing from parents frequently in Washington in the last couple of years is that teachers are making it really difficult and really embarrassing for the students who have opted out. They're sending them off to the library. They're making it really obvious. They're really trying to set an example of these students who have been opted out. And that's a really difficult thing to get away from. So I think the biggest thing that we can do for parents is encourage those conversations, like Lori was mentioning, having conversations with your students so they understand what these surveys are about, what their intentions are, and how to advocate for themselves to through these situations. And the best way we can do that is by having a lot of communication, which it's really hard. I mean, I had 4 teenagers in my house, all in 9th through 12th grade, and you are like, it's just whack-a-mole parenting is what I call it. And it's difficult for parents. They've got so much going on. They've got probably their own job, and they've got sports and academics and all of these things that they're trying to get a handle on. And here's this one other thing that we're adding on top of it, which is really hard for them to keep track of. So having those conversations in the car with your kid when you're driving from, one point to another, where you can, kind of role play with them. That's one of the things I did a lot with one of my daughters who's on the autism spectrum, role playing with her a lot so that when she came in contact with these adults, she was more ready for it. So that's what I would add to what Scarlen and Lori have already said. I would just add that to it.
Those are great suggestions. I think I just want to add 2 things. One is I really think Scarlen's point about letting parents know that they have the right to inspect the survey before it is given to the student, right? That's the before piece is the big piece here, right? Schools don't always want to share these surveys. They can make it difficult for you to look at the survey, but you have a right to do that. And, you don't have to feel odd about it. You just make an appointment, you go in, maybe they make you sit in the office and look at it, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. You're actually being a good parent if you're doing that. So I would really recommend to parents that they take advantage of that opportunity. And the other thing I want to just add, which I had talked about a while ago, was in my district, courage is contagious, right? We had a school where a couple kids opted out of surveys. This would have been 2.5 years ago. And same thing, sit in the hallway, sit in the, library by yourself. Everybody knows you're the one not taking it. Why aren't you taking it? Well, then the why aren't you taking it turned into why aren't you taking it? In other words, why do I have to take it if you're not taking it? So it went from a small group of kids who were going to the library or sitting in the hall, not taking these surveys, to spreading amongst the other kids in the school that, oh, this is a thing. I don't have to actually do this. So that fast forward, the next time this school gave these surveys, they had to put the kids in the gym because there were so many kids who had opted out. So I think, it's hard to be the first person maybe, but I do feel like it catches. And then more kids go home and they start talking to their parents. And then the parents reach out to other parents who've opted their kids out and said, how does this work? How do you do that? So I just think those are 2 important points. So Scarlen, the next question I wanted to ask you is, what can parents do if they want to review the actual curriculum that's being taught in their classes?
Yeah, they do the same thing as the surveys. It starts out with a simple email saying, hey, I want to inspect the curriculum that my child will go through either, this day, this week. I will say it's a little bit harder to ask for the curriculum for the entire year, because sometimes the teachers don't even know what they're going to be teaching for the entire year. Sometimes curriculums change, or, there's huge storms and where no one goes to school for that week. So kind of taking it day by day or week by week, it might be a less overwhelming approach for both the parent and the teachers involved. But don't forget, the PPRA also allows parents to inspect curriculum take the time to request to review. You might have to go to the school and sit down in the office and look through it. But I would say that's a inconvenience that would be worth to protect what your child might be learning in school. And some schools will say that it is copyright protected, so they won't want to email it to you. They won't want to let you see it. But don't accept the response. If you do get that response, you can tell them like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll go in and inspect it in person. Most of the times the school districts do accept an appointment. If they don't, if they're still refusing to let you review that curriculum, please reach out to us and we might have other options available as well. Curriculum review is important in the states where ethnic studies is a mandated requirement. I believe at California, and maybe Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but Washington is either already mandating it or will mandate it soon. And what we found from tips from parents across the country is that there's a lot of divisive subjects that are being taught within ethnic studies. Most recently, a lot of anti-Semitism. Back in 2020, it was, BLM and white supremacy. So as the culture changes, maybe the topics will change, but it is important to make sure that we are reviewing that curriculum just to see what's up, because you never know what they're going to put in that curriculum.
Yeah, that's great information, Scarlen. Julie, are you seeing any pushback, or what are you seeing in Washington State if parents want to access curriculum?
So Washington passed House Bill 2231 this year, which makes it extremely difficult for parents to contest or oppose any of the books in the library or textbooks or materials that are being used in classroom. That said, a parent still has a right to say, to review curriculum and say, my child isn't going to, participate in this. You need to give them an alternate assignment, and parents need to know that that is within their rights. As Scarlen mentioned, ethnic studies is, it's not currently mandated. It is an elective class in the high school. The Washington State Board of Education, however, has been trying for the last 3 years to make it a graduation requirement. So we anticipate that is going to happen. We've had representatives from our organization speaking at the last 2 school board meetings where they've been discussing how they could implement this as a graduation requirement. Ethnic studies is a requirement. It's mandated for the teachers. So they have to do a certain number of hours every year on ethnic studies. So they're indoctrinating the teachers who will then indoctrinate the students. And the ethnic studies is really just a pretty word for critical race theory. It's very divisive. It is extremely racist. And in many of the school districts in the state, especially on the west side of the state, which is far more progressive than the eastern side of the state, many of the school districts have already implemented it into the curriculum. I've done a deep dive on, I think, North Shore School District and Seattle School District, and really highlighted all of their curriculum. You can usually go on the website and find most of these curriculums, but I think they're starting to get a little bit more private about it. And so I don't know if they have as much of the content as they had previously. So the best thing that parents can do, I like the idea of reviewing the curriculum. As I mentioned before, there's just such an onslaught of like the ethnic studies is woven into every other part. It's in the SEL, it's in math, it's in English language arts, it's in all of these areas. So it really makes it hard for parents to contain it. You can't opt your kid out of every single subject. So having those conversations with your kids, asking your kids to show you when they see things like the wheel of, power and privilege, things like that, because parents can speak up. I think the best thing that happens when we speak up, as you mentioned, Marissa, courage is contagious, right? And so we're sounding the alarm. So other parents who might be too busy to go look into the curriculum and see what their kids are being exposed to, they're catching it from another parent. And then you get that domino effect, and more parents speaking up just amplifies the voice and makes it, puts the pressure on the school to take some of these things out of the curriculum, or make, even just slight changes in a heavily blue area like Western Washington is progress in the right direction for our kids.
That's great. That's great, Julie. Thank you so much. Lori, what has your group experienced when it comes to these curriculum issues in Colorado?
So in the state of Colorado, it's actually fairly easy to request a review of curriculum, but where the problem that we're having is in the school lesson themselves. And kind of just go off of what Julie was talking about, how teachers are required to take professional development in ethnic studies. And again, it is just like she was saying, it's all these clever words to hide the fact that they're implementing critical race theory and gender ideology into the classroom. And so what we're seeing is that the legislature and the school districts are pretty clever in terms of making everything, pretty broad in the curriculum, but it's when the teachers are in the classroom in their own school lessons that they're implementing. And so, for example, in the state of Colorado, our State Board of Education, in response to legislation that passed in 2019, requiring social studies to include LGBTQIA standards, passed a resolution that LGBTQIA must be incorporated into social studies beginning in first grade. And so what the Colorado Department of Education did was they allowed for some resources to be put online for teachers to download. And the way that this plays out in the classroom, it seems like it's coming in under the guise of kindness and inclusivity. But the teachers are taught in these professional development courses about a teaching strategy called generative themes. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's Paulo Freire, who's was a Brazilian educator, philosopher, who brought this in. And what a teacher will do is they might start talking, for example, about leadership and government. They might talk about the Capitol and the people that work there and our state's governor. And what makes our governor so unique is that he's married to a man. And that's how you start to bring in the school lesson, which can't necessarily be reviewed in curriculum. The curriculum just says must bring in LGBTQ standards. But now we're on a conversation in a first grade classroom where a sixth grader might say, well, what does that mean? What is married to a man? And then the teacher can now go off on this theme on, well, that means he is gay, and all families look differently. So where we have found the problem and where we get the most incident reports are on school lessons. And we have students, because parents are talking with their children and talking about what their concerns are and what they need to be looking out for, we have students and teachers that are taking photographs using their phones. But now with this big movement to remove cell phones from the schools, because of course it is better for learning if children are not have access to their phones all day, but it's taking away the safety mechanism that we have in place for students to be able to take photos and teachers to be able to take photos.
That's what I think is so important, hearing your stories, hearing what's happening in your different states. I think these are perfect examples about why it is so important for parents to take the time to request to see this curriculum and to actually look through the curriculum so that you can get ahead of what's coming right down the pike for your students. Because I think a theme that we keep touching on here that I think is so important is communication with your child, right? So if our kids are not always super communicative with us. I have 2 boys, so, take the lead there on that. But so if we can have kind of leading conversations with our children about what we know is coming down the pike in their classroom, I think that's a really important tool that we can have. And that's a really good use of the PPRA, which again is something that we already have available to us. So if you can't change the curriculum, which would be extremely difficult to do, sometimes the next best thing we can do is certainly be aware of it and then talk to our children about it and tell them what we might think about the lesson, or another way to look at whatever is being explained to them in the classroom to kind of combat, what's happening in the classroom. But we can only do that if we know what's being taught. So I just think that's an important point about how to utilize the PPRA. Scarlen, sometimes schools will briefly reference FERPA when they're talking about students' rights and privacy. Can you talk to us a little bit about, first of all, what FERPA is, and second of all, how parents can utilize FERPA to gain extra information about what's going on with their children in school?
Yeah, so parents, they're rightly concerned about schools keeping secrets from them. We here at PDE, we have a running list of school districts that have policies that state staff and teachers can or should keep secrets from their parents. So, under the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, parents can request to review their child's official student record. So schools should not be keeping separate records hidden from the parents. And one of the things to look for when you do set up an appointment to view your student's record, official record, is different names or pronouns, restroom or locker room accommodations that are different from their biological sex, and any mental health counselor sessions that you weren't aware of. All of that information should be in their official student record. And if you have any suspicions, or that your child has had mental health counseling sessions, or that they've been socially transitioned and it's not in their official student record, then that's when you would want to ask a little bit more questions, right?
Okay, great. Thank you. We also have, I don't know if you mentioned this, but on Parents Defending Education website, we have a running list of school districts that have policies that state staff and teachers can or should keep the transgender status of their students from their parents. So if you want to look up your school district and see if they're on that list, that's something that's available to you on the defendinged.org website. Julie, have you had any parents in Washington State who have tried and maybe successfully used FERPA?
I have not heard of any.
Okay, how about you, Lori, in Colorado?
Yeah, so actually right now I'm helping a parent in the Denver Public School District try to request FERPA records. And the request went in at the beginning of September and we're still waiting. This is a situation where we know the school district has not only a policy, but legislation that backs up hiding gender transitions from the parent. And so that's one of the most difficult things. And I think one of the areas that we really need to work on from a legal perspective is this manipulation of FERPA, creating these separate records that are protected under school policy and state legislation.
Okay, great. There are a lot of other good things that you can find if you make use of your opportunity to review your student's official student record, right, which is what FERPA covers. You can see maybe there are behavioral things in there, right, that your child might be getting in trouble at school, but maybe you don't know about. So that's a good thing to keep an eye on. In my district, we found out and that it was a massive FERPA violation, that the school was not correctly recording class level on the transcript. So that was a big FERPA violation because that's an official student record, right? So that has to be perfect. Most schools, I would say schools themselves for larger districts, and then the district-wide for smaller districts, have a FERPA officer that's assigned, right? A specific person. So if you see a FERPA violation, or if you're having difficulty accessing your student records, you do have the option of seeking out whomever that FERPA representative is in your district and working through them. And then of course you can always file a FERPA violation, a FERPA complaint, to the federal FERPA office, which has to be researched. So a parent has to do that. So an organization cannot do that on behalf of a parent, but a parent has to do that. So that is an option that's available to you if you feel like you're getting stonewalled and you're not getting anywhere, or they're making it very difficult for you to have access to your student records. So we've talked about PPRA, we've talked about FERPA. Now we have the really big topic, which is Title IX. So if you're not up to date on what's been going on with the Biden-Harris Title IX rewrite, you can get caught up at defendinged.org/Title IX. And that'll give you a bunch of information, quick overview of what's happening across the country with Title IX. Scarlen, what's the quick update about Title IX, and what can parents do about wherever the Title IX regulation stands in their state?
So there are currently 26 states that are involved in litigation against the U.S. Department of Education's Title IX rewrite. These states cannot enforce the policies in the rewrite. So ask your school what their pronoun enforcement and bathroom policies are, that your school should either have that readily available, and if they don't, then your school board should have that readily available. And if you are in a state that has an injunction against the Biden Title IX rewrite, the district's policies cannot be based on the rewrite. If you live in a state where the new Title IX regulations are in effect, and this was as of August 1st of this year, it's important to talk to your children in an age-appropriate manner about what these changes mean. So have a conversation and have a plan around how you and your student will handle seeing a member of the opposite sex in the restroom. How will you and your student handle a student or teacher wanting to be referred to by a different name or different pronoun? How will you and your female student handle competing in athletics against a team with a biological male? It's quite unfortunate that we have to, have these conversations with our children and make plans, but it's better to have those plans in place in case something that does happen than not have any plans in place.
Thank you. Lori, what are parents in your state doing to push back against the Title IX rewrite?
So most recently, we have an organization I'm a co-founder of called Protect Kids Colorado. And we in the state of Colorado are one of, I think, 24 states that has a citizen ballot initiative process. So we brought forth a ballot initiative that would protect parents' rights to be notified if their child is in distress about their gender, and then also to protect female athletics in the state of Colorado. So biological males would not be able to participate in female athletics in public schools. Unfortunately, we were sued all the way up to the Supreme Court. So we lost 100 days of our signature collection period. We needed to gather 125,000 signatures to get it on the ballot for this November. But what was so encouraging is that we were able to get over 70,000 signatures with an all volunteer network. So people are concerned. The culture is shifting in Colorado, and there is increased awareness of what is happening. One of our biggest issues is in our incident reporting tool, we get every week an incident report regarding the opposite gender being in a biological male being in a female space, or even biological females being in male spaces. So students are very concerned. Some of the things that we're seeing that children are doing, and to talk with your kids about, kids coming home with headaches and coming to realize that they're not drinking water throughout the day because they don't want to go into the restroom to go to the bathroom because there might be an opposite gender student there. So we do want to encourage parents to talk with their kids about, just like Scarlen was saying, what do we do? How do we respond? What do we believe as a family? On coloradoparents.org, on our parents tab, we do have some guidelines and some conversation starters again that can help parents with these conversations and navigating these conversations with their children. But it's very alarming, but people are standing up. We do have a handful of school districts that are writing good policy around notifying parents, around creating single stalls in bathrooms, things of that nature. But on the opposite extreme, the majority of school districts, just recently in Jefferson County, allowed a fifth grader to, on an overnight trip for a male student that believed he was transgender female, to sleep in the same bed as a biological female. And it's not safe. It's very confusing for children. I think that's another one of the big things that we're seeing with incident reports. 6-year-olds not understanding why a boy dressed as a girl is in the boys' room. And then if it goes the opposite way, where you have a student that everybody knows is biologically a boy dressed as a girl in the girls' room, these kids are having real confusion about it, and it's causing real harm.
Julie, what are you seeing about Title IX in Washington? Some of the same things that Lori's talking about?
We've actually been working with school boards, local elected school boards. The first one was Kennewick School District in Eastern Washington. And in June, they passed a resolution essentially saying that they were not going to adopt the changes to Title IX, and that boys and girls sports would be separated, and boys and girls bathrooms would remain separated. And so what we've done is, working with specific school board directors, we've taken those resolutions, worked with parents in districts throughout the state, so that they have the tools that they need to approach maybe a friendly school board director that can make a motion to pass a similar resolution. even if it doesn't get passed, you have all of the school board directors on record with their vote on this. But it has a similar resolution just was passed either last week or the week before in Meade School District, which is in the Spokane area of Washington. There's a school district in Whatcom County, which is Northwest Washington. They also passed a resolution. So we're really trying to empower parents to take this resolution to their school board directors and ask them to pass something like that to protect the students in their district. The superintendent of public instruction in Washington State, Chris Reichdahl, has come out with, back in August, he came out with a statement about how it was going to be enforced throughout the state, all of the Title IX changes. He's totally on board with everything that they're doing. And so to have these school boards, individual school boards that will go against the grain to protect students' rights has been really encouraging, and I think has given parents that encouragement that they need to go to their local school board and ask for them to do something similar to protect girls specifically.
That's great. That's such an encouraging, smart, I think, kind of action, step that parents can take is, first of all, being aware of what's going on, of course, and understanding what's going on, but then what are you going to do with that information? So I like this approach of, we're going to talk to our kids about it, but we also have to have that line of communication with the public officials who can do something about it, and talking to our school board and asking them to explain things to us and how they're going to handle different scenarios. I think that's really key. So that's a really good point. Thank you for making that. So Scarlen, besides the things that we've already talked about, PPRA, FERPA, where things stand on Title IX, what can parents do to be aware of what's going on in their child's maybe more hostile school and school environment?
Yeah, so just be an involved parent. Get involved in your child's school, their school district, and the best way to know that's really the best way to know what's going on with what they're learning in school. Joining a school committee is a great way to learn about what is going on. Get to know the teachers and staff. Even if they don't have the same beliefs or values as you, it's still important to maintain a healthy and respectful relationship with them. They might be more willing to help you or provide you with information if that respect is there. Get to know the staff as well. Get to know the principal. I know that a lot of principals across the country have like little morning coffee chats with parents where they can ask questions. So, make the time to go to one of those and contribute in meaningful ways. Attend your school's PTA meetings. Become a PTA member. These meetings cover a variety of topics impacting your school. And a lot of the times the PTA moms, the PTA parents have a lot of leverage on what happens within that school, and that way you can be aware of what the PTA organization pushes, because sometimes they lean a certain way, but it's a great way to be informed about what's happening at the school and experiences of other students and families. Learn what the priorities of the schools are. So the PTA is a great way to be in the know of what's happening. And like we've been saying this entire session, just communicate with your kids. Talk to them about how their day is going, about the interactions with their teachers and other students, about what they're doing in class. Look over their assignments and their homework. Review their tests and papers that come home. Review online assignments and submissions. Just be in the know. Talk to them, even if they don't really want to talk to you when they're teenagers. Try your very best to maintain a healthy line of communication with them, because that's really the best way to know what is happening in their life in the K-12 space.
That's great. Those are great things to keep in mind. Lori, do you have any other advice for parents who might live in a state or district that doesn't necessarily prioritize parental involvement, or the students, of how those parents can get involved and stay engaged?
Yeah, I echo everything Scarlen was mentioning. And one of the other things that parents can do is to do a social media deep dive on their children's teachers. I think that's really important. Mary Margaret Olahan, who's an investigative journalist, shared that at a recent event that we hosted. Doing a social media deep dive, looking at Reddit and TikTok and Facebook and all the different platforms, Instagram can tell you a lot about what your teacher believes, and if they might potentially be bringing in political ideology into the classroom. A couple other options that you can do is be sure to talk to your children about substitute teachers. So even if you believe that you're in a school district that is strictly focused on classical education, we've had an incident report where a substitute came into an English class and spent the entire hour talking to the children about racism against non-binary people. So we want to make sure that our kids are geared up. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're getting out of this call is the open dialogue and conversation with your children, and getting to know your teachers, doing the walkthroughs, not just in the hallways, but in your child's classroom, seeing if they have a classroom library with material that you might want to be informed about. So those are just some other suggestions that parents can employ. Also, one more. If something alarming happens, submit an incident report to Parents Defending Education or in your own state organization like Colorado Parents Advocacy Network. So incident reports are really important. And then we can amplify that message on social media. We can connect families with media, with legal help if necessary. So that's another important tool.
I love the social media deep dive tip. That's a really good one. So thank you for sharing that. Julie, is there anything that we missed?
I would just encourage parents who are, have children in schools in these hostile states that that these schools are teaching your children that it's okay and sometimes it's necessary to keep secrets from their parents. That is what your children are being told, which I just want to reinforce how important it is to have those conversations, have a relationship with your child. I know it's easy for the kids to come home and get right on their phones, but to have a time maybe where they're disconnected from the phone, or you're riding in the car and they don't have the earbuds in and you guys are actually talking. Because if you can get on the trust chart with your child when they go to school and hear these people telling them, you can't trust your mom, don't tell her this, you need to keep this a secret, your child will be ready for that and will respond accordingly. The other thing that we tell parents to do is get a network in your school district. And we help citizens in our state to do that and get them connected with other people, because it's difficult for parents to jump in and take action. I know people already feel overwhelmed, but if everybody does something small, it becomes something big. And so if you have a network of parents, you guys can take turns reviewing the school board agenda, attending the meeting, and making public comment. It doesn't have to be you every single time. So building that network is really key. And it also helps parents so that they don't feel like they're on an island in a very dark blue state.
Yeah, that's an amazing tip. And one thing that I always like to tell parents too, like start simple, right, is on occasion, if you're able to, try picking your child up from school. Because I know when my boys would get off the bus, all I would hear about was whatever, atrocity or whatever injustice or whatever, crazy thing happened on the bus, and not so much contact with what actually happened during the school day. So when I would drive them back and forth to school on occasion, I felt like when they would get in the car after school, that was a great time to have that, as you pointed out, Julie, communication with no earbuds in, where the kids are really dialed in and focused and excited to talk to you about their day. So I think that's just a tip that I would pass on to other parents. Well, I hope this conversation has been helpful to parents, but especially the ones who feel like they're swimming upstream with your district and your state leadership. I think staying engaged and actively participating in your child's education is essential in advocating for your children. And, I would really encourage people, we talked about it a lot today, ask questions. And, I would really be persistent with your school in expecting answers, because sometimes parents will put questions out there and then they don't hear back from the school, and then they don't want to feel like they're burdening or bothering the school, so they kind of let it go. But there's a very nice way you can interact with your school, but still being persistent and expecting to get answers, because all of these issues are dealing with our children. So it's really important that we have the understanding that we're expecting from our schools. So we put a lot of these tips on our website as a resource, which you can find at defendinged.org. So hopefully you'll go there and check it out. Lori, how do parents follow you and your organization and what you're doing?
Thank you. We are on all social media platforms at CPAN Colorado, or you can simply look up Colorado Parent Advocacy Network on the social media platform search tools. Our website is coloradoparents.org. And we have a sign up page that you can get involved and make sure you're receiving our newsletters and particular calls to action for your school district. So in the state of Colorado, we have 178 public school districts, and we have calls to action specific to each one. And we can make sure that if you're in that school district, you get the information you need.
Wonderful. And Julie, how can people follow you and your organization?
Yeah. So if they want to follow me personally, which I post mostly political content on X is at Julie C. Barrett. But we are Conservative Ladies of Washington on every social media platform. We have both a public Facebook page and a private Facebook group for people that are concerned about, people seeing that they're in, that they like a conservative organization on social media. We've got a private group, so no one can see that. And you can also find us on our website, conservativeladiesofwa.com. There's a form there where you can connect with us. You can join. We have a legislative action team that parents can join if they want to get involved in policy at a local level, at a state level. We also host a Thursday, we call it lunchtime legislation, but it's basically just a way for citizens to come together and talk about issues that are happening in their local community and on a state level. And so people are welcome to join that too. And all of that can be found on our website.
Thank you so much. I really encourage everybody who's watching to follow these two amazing organizations. They do so much good work and they have so many wonderful resources on their website. So I would encourage you to check them out and to follow them. I think most importantly from this conversation, I want everybody to know that we are really all in this together. And thank you so much for advocating for students and for families. If you need help or advice about anything, or you want to share something going on in your district, please reach out to us at defendinged.org. Please share this video with parents, grandparents, or concerned citizens who you think could benefit from the information that we discussed today. And Lori, Julie, and Scarlen, I want to thank you so much for walking through all of this information for parents. I want to thank you for being such incredible advocates and really role models for other people getting involved in this advocacy space. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Marissa. It was great to be with you.